Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday with me, Ryan, aka Sifu Messiah. This is a weekly show which covers everything from the world of Star Citizen over the past week. Links can be found in the description for anything we discussed during the show, so let's get on with it. So this week we have the last 10 for the chairman for a while. There is Around the Verse as usual. We have information on the first person shooter stances and breathing. Plus we are giving away an Aurora MR game package. So I would just like to kick off this week's Star Citizen Sunday with a big thank you to Steve Flair, who has become our latest patron, and also to Tanner Harper, or Derpy Rage as he is known in the comments, for buying me a beer. Thank you both, much appreciated. Okay, so even though I said last week that this would be the last 10 for the chairman, today's 10 for the chairman is the last one for a while. He's going to the UK to direct the motion capture shoot, which will happen for a few months, he says, so he'll be away or he'll be absent for 10 for the chairman for them. He may do one while he's there, but during that time period it's very rare that we'll see much of him other than the information he gives out about the motion capture. He said it's pretty awesome cast, but he will not share with us any of the cast yet, hopefully at a later date. He said Squadron 42 is going to have a big story arc, and it's split into trilogies as we know. Episode 1 will be at the end of this year. He said it's the equivalent of 70 Wing Commander missions, and he said it's also quite seamless, where you would fly in space doing a mission, and then you may have some FPS with a pirate on a space station, then you could chase the pirate down to a landing zone, so on and so forth. He said it's very fluid gameplay with checkpoints which will just play into each other, and as we know it's going to be about 20 hours for the first chapter of gameplay, so 3 chapters. We're looking at about 60-70 hours worth of gameplay, which is amazing. Episode 2 is called Behind Enemy Lines, part of the $6 million stretch goal. If you backed before the $6 million, you get it for free next year, and episode 3 will be there the year after. So you will have to pay for each chapter if you haven't backed at an earlier date, but to be honest, it's like Battlefield. They release new patches and, you know, premium and so forth, and you have to pay for them anyway. So to say we're getting a AAA game plus the persistent universe, it's really not a big deal. So as he said, 3 months he'll be in the UK. He's got to do a lot of prep for the shoot, plus directing it all. It's a big job. He says also if you loved Wing Commander, then you'll definitely love Squadron 42. And they plan to keep building the universe, or the persistent universe, but also release narrative stories throughout the whole plan of Star Citizen. So we're seeing first off the military role, where you play a member of the UEE. He says there may be a rogue Han Solo style story, not just military. It's going to be all sorts of different things that'll be single player. So if you are just a single player person, don't worry, you will have much more content coming eventually down the road. Anyway, on to the questions. The first question was, how will the medic and surgeons improve over time in terms of practice? Obviously, if you play Arena Commander, you get better and better at flight yourself by just practice. How will this work with medic and surgeons? And he started by saying it's definitely the same case in mining and exploration. You'll get better just by practicing. So, you know, you're using the laser or you're looking for certain areas to probe. You'll get better at it and more efficient. But he said it's too early to tell now for the medics and surgeon gameplay mechanics. But he did say there will perhaps be a higher level stuff, whereas for the moment, you know, you're just giving someone like a stim pack style medic revive type thing, or like a Dyna pack, I think it was called, that little spray thing you have for them. It's quite simple. It's a very simple idea, but when you get to like the proper high-end medic surgeon stuff, it'll be more towards recovery. So getting that injured party or member, getting him onto the ship, you know, the Cutlass Red, putting him on the bed, then fixing him, and then obviously taking him to the flying hospital or a hospital down at the base. Very much like an ambulance, you know, you'd get the patient on the bed in the ambulance, stabilise him while you are en route to the hospital, and then treat them there. It's going to be the same sort of thing like that once the full system is released. So saving someone's life may take a lot more effort than just, or a lot more skill than just, you know, applying a stim pack to them. Currently, it is just a basic, you apply a stim pack, or you drag your fallen comrade out of the action and repair him. But eventually we will see a lot more in-depth gameplay with medics. So the next question is, will we see different types of weapons other than the sort of straight line lasers or bullets that we have got currently? And he says definitely. Obviously we've seen, but we haven't really had hands-on with the electric shotgun. He says there's also neutron guns, which I think are available in Arena Commander, but I haven't used one, so I don't know what they're actually like. He says more are coming, and we will see some in FPS and then eventually Arena Commander. So next question, is there more uses for gathered refined resources other than just selling them? And Chris says it depends. In general, he says you will mine and refine yourself, or maybe pass it on to someone else to refine for you, then sell it to an economics node. NPC mainly, he says, but then later on players will be able to own their own business. Also, if you own a factory, eventually anyway, you may own a mining node where they take the ore to your finery, which again you own, and then the materials from there, or the minerals, will come to you for creating ships or weapons or whatever factory you choose to run at the time. To be honest, I think they were more asking, can we use the resources for crafting? But I could be wrong there. If that was the case, then Chris didn't obviously get the question either, but that's the feeling I got from it. But it's still cool to hear about owning factories and so forth. Anyway, the question after that is, will we be able to fabricate weapons, armor, and ships, etc.? Very similar to the last question. And he said that when a player owns an economics node, he can generate parts. He also says that not everyone will own a node. They will be limited, so only the people who have got the money will actually be able to buy the nodes. So if you are planning on owning a factory, it won't probably be out for the first iteration of the PU, but I would start earning a lot of money and putting it in savings for when the factories do come available, so you can just go out and buy one. Anyway, you can use these to build and sell weapons, not on a smaller scale at the moment. It's more like big scale factories, but later on he says there may be a smaller scale factory node, like a ship, like maybe a factory ship, where you have to get the relevant resources, and eventually over time, over a certain time scale, they haven't decided yet, it will spit out the item that you have been creating. So again, some nice insights into what factories will be like. You will be able to own them. They'll be limited per person, there won't be enough for everybody to have one, but you will be able to create what you want to create. You won't physically do it yourself, you'll just get the items you need or the resources, and then the factory will do it for you, and eventually, on a process line, it'll kick out the ship or the weapon or whatever, and then you can sell them. Anyway, next question. Are there any plans to have helmet cams that would feed into a team leader role? And Chris says that definitely have spectator cameras. As we know, we have spectator cameras in Arena Commander. You can connect to a remote spectator, or you can be a remote spectator of someone else flying around. He also said if you get killed in FPS, I assume the FPS module, you'll get a helmet cam of someone else perhaps, but they're not sure about having them for sort of like multi-lead team leaders and so forth. So they can't have one screen where, like in Aliens, where you can sort of see the helmet cams of each person on one screen. He says CryEngine just won't support it yet. He did say it will allow people to stream their own view, and longer term they're looking to have a client which will allow you to stream out of CIG and broadcast on their website, so you can go to their website, click on someone streaming and watch it in action. And also they do plan to have traffic cams, where maybe there'll be one or two placed in Terra where you can flick between it on the website and just see what's going on in that area, which is pretty cool. Nice idea. And he has mentioned that they're looking into our research and development and tech at the moment to allow this sort of thing, as it's not currently available, but they want to make it really easy for live streamers and YouTubers and all sorts of people to put out their content. But I do remember a while ago when there was a question similar to this, and it was to do more with the Redeemer. When you drop off a bunch of soldiers, can you have like panels with their vital stats and watch them, and if one of them dies, they flatline, and then, you have to send in someone to go and get them, and also have helmet cams. And he did say that they hadn't thought about it, but they really want to. So I'm not really sure what's happening with that now. I assume things like maybe flatlines, like vital stats rather than cameras will work. So hopefully we'll be able to have that still in place, where if you drop off a group of soldiers, you can have a panel with each one you've dropped off and their heart rate. Obviously not maybe the cameras now, but just the heart rate, and seeing how they're doing. And if one of them flatlines, you can say, right, thingy is died, he's in this area, go and check out why, and so forth. Pretty cool. Hopefully we'll be able to see all of it in place eventually, but for now the CryEngine won't support things like multi-lead or multi-team leader roles where you can have all different cameras. Bit of a shame. Anyway, next question is, how will the Vanguard's 2x size 2 shields work? And this is something I've said where it's kind of like, it doesn't seem so big, but we've figured out that the shields are all being changed size-wise. Now, the way it'll work, because the Vanguard has 2 shields, whereas say the Aurora, for example, has 1 shield. Once that shield is down, it's gone. The Vanguard will have 2 nodes. So the things you can buy with your REC now, you'll have 2 of those. One will cover one half of the ship, and the other will cover the other half. Bigger capital ships will actually have multiple shield generators, he said. So there's no single point of failure. So if one goes down, you'll still have shields around. It's not like they take out the shield and your whole ship is vulnerable, which is very cool. So while maybe that particular area or side is down, you'll be able to send someone to go and fix it, but you'll still have shields working in the other areas. I did not know that. That's very, very cool. Anyway, next question. What games have inspired your FPS? Now, this is a good question because he hasn't really specified as to how the FPS is going to be. We've all been coming to conclusions of our own, and to be honest, I believe our own conclusions are accurate. So he did mention that he plays Call of Duty, Battlefield 4, and he said he didn't want it to be like like Call of Duty. He says COD is just too roboty, you know, there's not going to be any respawns. He says Battlefield 4 is his favourite as he likes teamwork, but he wants elements of slower paced gameplay, so not just running and gunning like you can do in Battlefield. He also said if you get shot, you know, your friend will have to grab you, you may have to lay down smoke or whatever, or put cover fire down, drag him out, put a Dynapack on him and get him back to life again. He says combat is more of a session. If you get taken out, you can't just respawn back in again, so you've got to take it slow. He did say that it will be a blend, and this is great because this is exactly what I wanted it to be. He said it'll be a blend between Battlefield and Arma, which is perfect. He says fun like Battlefield, but not as, but with the realism of Arma, but not as technical as Arma can be. So it's not going to be a really hefty learning curve. It should still be fun, but it's not going to be like a run and gun type scenario. So that is, in my opinion, perfect. Cannot wait for that. Now, also during this question, he mentioned something about Arma, which actually related back to the next question. And I don't mean armour as in the game, Armed Assault. I mean armour clothing type. And he says that with heavy armour, you're going to have less field of view. So it's going to be harder to see, you know, you're going to be more focused direct. It's going to take more out of you weight-wise because it'll be heavier. So you will run out of energy quicker, you'll get breathless quicker, which means you'll have more weapon sway. But you'll be able to take more hits, which is kind of obvious. You know, light armour is quick, less energy you use to move. You may be more quiet, you know, silent moving as well, so you're not going to be able to stealth very well in heavy armor, but with light armor you'll probably have a lot less noise generation. So, but obviously you'll take less hits. So, you know, if you're out of breath, you've not got great aim. He says it's going to be like proper resource management when fighting. You're not just going to be like an item running around with, you know, immense energy like when you play Battlefield. You can just literally run from one end to the next over and over again and not get tired. He said it's going to be, this is the whole point of armor really, it's going to be like Arma, the game, where, you know, if you are running, you'll only be able to run a certain amount of distance, or sprint, should I say, before you'll get out of breath, you know, so it's very, very difficult, and you've got to work together as a team so that you're not all knackered, you're not all reloading, or very, very cool. I really cannot wait to get our hands on this FPS module. I'm so excited for it. Anyway, the next question, and the final question, is how will we control NPCs in FPS? And he just wanted to say that when the FPS releases, there will be no NPCs, so it is all multiplayer. It'll be you against other players. Later down the road, there will be NPCs versus you, and he says there will be a horde mode where you'll have to take on roles, like hordes and hordes of NPCs, which will be quite interesting, but at the moment it's multiplayer only. There will be NPCs later in Squadron 42 as well, which you may have to control, but he did say the commands will be very similar to the flight controls or the wingman commands. Like, he says, for example, attack my target would be a command, cover my 6, or stay on my wing. So, very similar for FPS, it'll be things like breach this door, go to this point. And he did say that the NPCs may not always listen to you. He says the AI may decide otherwise. So it sounds like they'll have dynamic AI, which are not just going to be like, yes, yes, yes. You know, they're going to maybe, in a way, think, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. Which could be a little irritating, but then I suppose it depends on how much you pay for your NPC crew. I don't know. Anyway, he did not explain exactly how this will work. He didn't say you hold down a certain key or you use voice control. But to be honest, I think I'm going to try and just plump for voice control throughout the whole thing because there's going to be a lot to do. Anyway, that was the 10 for the chairman. Tell me your thoughts. I would love to hear what your opinions are on everything asked here, so put them in the comments below.
On the next Empire Report, could Martian terraforming be coming undone? We look at why the planet's centuries-old transformation may be less stable than previously thought. And
Black Mountain tea. Millions of cups are drunk every day, but could the stimulant be behind a new mysterious ailment? Plus,
we talked to comedian Lupo Dingler to learn the 5 most annoying things about visiting Stanton 3.
all that and more on the latest Empire Report at 2200 SET.
So, as you saw there, Mars terraforming gone wrong. I do wonder if this will be an event maybe later on in the Persistent Universe, later on as a Game Master event where you may have to rescue people from Mars as a certain area of it may be contaminated or maybe about to explode. They did mention something a while ago that, you know, there'll be rescue missions like this. It could play into it. Also, we heard Black Mountain tea could be causing ailments and sickness. again, just another in-fiction type of engagement to bring more backstory to Star Citizen to make the world more believable and immersive. So the final part on Empire Report was about Lupo Dingler, who is a comedian, and he is showing us the 5 most annoying things about visiting Stanton 3, which is ArtCore. So again, ArtCore aside, will this be something we can do planet-side? Maybe go and see comedians, a bit like Grand Theft Auto 4, where you would go and see Gervais in concert. I don't see why not. It may be something we can do as a pastime in the persistent universe. Anyway, on to Sandy and Ben, and they said that the 1.1.1 patch, which is currently in the PTU at the moment, should be available this week. They said this on Thursday, and so far, you know, I'm recording this Friday, and so far it's not out, so hopefully we'll see it over the weekend. I am busy over the weekend, so I won't be able to play any of it, which is unfortunate, but never mind. They say it's bringing in the second seat functionality, which is very cool. It means the Gladiator, which has 2 seats, 1 pilot, 1 gunner, can now have 2 people on board. Also, the Cutlass and the Super Hornet, which they will release for us, will also be included in this patch. Very cool. It's like a bridge towards the multi-crew ships. Anyway, news from around the verse, starting with Santa Monica CIG, and they say they are working on the Genesis Starliner concept. Now, this is the huge passenger liner which will transport hundreds of people from system to system, very much like these cruise liners we see in the ocean. He did say that it may bridge some more missions in the way of escort missions, so if you are an organisation or a group of players who like to do escorts, or maybe you're a single player that likes to escort, you may have to join up with other players to escort this liner from one system to the next. Very, very cool, is that? Anyway, Ilphonic is the next studio, and they say that the SATA ball prototype is finished, so hopefully we'll see some information on that of how the game will play. Again, it has weapons in it. I don't like it. I get the idea that a lot of people don't. Tell me your thoughts. Are you someone who does like the idea of using weapons for SATA ball? Anyway, hopefully someone commented saying hopefully we can have one that doesn't have weapons and one with weapons, so you can choose which one you want to play. Anyway, a little snippet now of realistic zero-G mechanics, where they say the full body will move naturally from head to toe, not just your upper torso or your head. Your full body will actually create movements which look realistic to the direction that you are trying to move, and it does look very cool. Anyway, they say they are reworking the visual effects for all the weapons, and they want all the weapons to match visually, so your ship weapons will have the same projectile style as handheld visuals as well, so they all tie in well. Anyway, on to Austin, Texas, which had bad sound. I mean, $79 million. Buy him a decent mic, for Christ's sake. They say that Tony Zurevec had started work on the Pioneer or Exploration mechanic. Now, he was the one that came up with the mining document that we saw, which delved really deep into how you and your friends can mine and all the different roles associated with mining. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a very similar document very soon, with just as much of a deep understanding to exploration and being a pioneer and discovering new parts of space that are yet to be found. Very excited for that. So going back to last week's episode, where a type of system called Grabby Hands was being worked on, and they say they are working on new animations for this, and it is actually picking up things within the world, your environment, and moving them with some fidelity. So it's not just going to be the Skyrim, everything's floating, you know, you'll actually physically, well, in a way, physically pick them up. I can't remember who it was that got that right, but well done. You were the first one to say that to me, and it kind of made sense because I had no idea what it meant. Anyway, also they're making shops feel different from shop to shop. They're building the brand, basically, so Cubby Blast will feel a lot different to Astro Armada. In Astro Armada, which is your ship showroom, where you would go and buy a ship, quite a high-end ship dealer as well, you will buy using a hologram, which will show you the ship, and you can explore the ship before you buy it, look in depth as to what you may like about the ship, what you may dislike. And also they say that Cubby Blast will have a shooting range to test your weapons out. And I did notice in one of the pictures earlier on this week that they had a little snippet of someone looking at a gun, and next to it was the shooting range sign. So I think that was the South by Southwest video, actually. So in Foundry 42 in the UK, they say they are getting the tutorial ready, and this is actually sounding a lot more interesting. My first impressions when I heard about the tutorial was it's just going to be the basics that pretty much, if you've played Arena Commander, you're going to figure out on your own. But he did say that it'll cater for new players, but there'll be a lot of good content for veteran players who think they know what they're doing. Anyway, this was actually requested a lot in the forums, was the tutorial, and it's going to play out where you enroll in a military flight exercise run by a veteran, and it'll take you through landing and takeoff, basic flight, ship systems, and basic combat too. So it sounds like it will actually be very, very fun, and I will probably do the full video of the tutorial and just take you through it all, just for the hell of it. So they also said the asteroid hangar will be available in free flight soon after they release the tutorial, and you'll be able to go in and out at your leisure. It won't just be now like when we launch Arena Commander, we're just in space. You'll actually be able to take off from your asteroid hangar, or the asteroid hangar, open the doors on the ceiling and take off, and also come back in again. It's going to be very exciting, and I really can't wait to see that. Anyway, after that, we went to Jenny Varner, who was doing an art round table where they discuss and meet all the art crew from a certain group. Very interesting, lots of nice things coming out about the art direction. Check it out if you're interested. There wasn't anything I wanted to pick out from it, but it's nice to hear. Anyway, the interview was William Wiseborn, who is the writer for CIG, and he's interviewing Cherie Heiberg, who is the archivist, or the archivist, should I say. She's a new employee who had come into group together and organise all of the information about the Star Citizen, which will make it easier for everyone to access, not just for writers but for designers who are creating things that have to go back over all the hundreds of lore posts and fiction posts just to try and keep it in the right playing field. And this lady, Cherie, is also writing the Galactopedia, which is interesting, and I cannot wait to see a full Galactopedia. Just sat there in my Mustang Beta in the back with a cup of joe, reading all about the persistent universe. It sounds fun. Anyway, Bug Smashers was back this week, and it's a gladiator bug, which is kind of new to the whole Arena Commander, where the ship would kill the player when flying. So you'll set off flying, and for some reason you'll collide with the ship. Obviously it's a bug that would be quite game breaking, so Mark and Ben went to town with it and sorted it out. Anyway, back to Sandy and Ben, and they were on about events. Gamescom, they say tickets will be up for sale, and as of now they are up for sale. There's about 1,800 left, hopefully by Sunday. If you are planning on going and you haven't heard, get in there quick, because I dread to think how many will be left. I'm still waiting to hear about the UK event, the Citizen Con. Hopefully that'll be next and we'll be able to buy tickets, because I'm dying to get to that. Anyway, they did say that more of the team will be at Gamescom. There's a list on the post itself listing all the people that are planning to go there from CIG. They're also putting up the two-man ships for sale. They will be available to purchase, so you've got the Hornet Tracker, the Cutlass, and the Gladiator. They'll all be back up for sale. If you missed out on getting one, now is your chance to pick one up. They say that you can land in free flight and your friend can hop into the turret. I don't know if it'll be available in Vandal Swarm with 1.1.1. They haven't mentioned it. This is all they've said, is that it's in free flight, but it would make sense if you can. Anyway, the sneak peek looks like one of the droids or the robots that you'll send out to salvage or mine, or even, I suppose, explore certain ships and so forth in EVA. I don't know which one it is, but it does look cool. It's got 4 little arms, very funky little thing, and I'm sure it'll be exciting using it. Anyway, that was Around the Verse. Tell me your thoughts on everything mentioned. I am genuinely interested. So this week we had a design post to do with the FPS stances and the breathing mechanics of first-person shooting. And they started explaining that your character is not just a floating camera like you see in many FPS games. It is an actual character. You have a massive interaction with the world, and CIG and Ilphonic are pushing the boundaries of FPS in Star Marine, much like the way they built Arena Commander. And they mentioned that they threw out the window all the systems that we are used to with traditional FPSs to design and create an entirely new look or an entirely new system for first-person shooters. Now this post, which is to do with the FPS stances and breathing, will focus on the stances. There's 3 main stances for aiming, plus the breathing and how you will manage your breathing during FPS. They did say that this system will add balance and tactical gameplay to Star Citizen, plus improve the overall realism and immersiveness of the first-person shooter aspect. And once we get our hands on it, we will help balance the FPS or Star Marine, just like we have with Arena Commander. And also the systems that they develop within Star Marine will benefit Star Citizen in the long run, with being the general way that we play the game. And they did say from border gunfights in the persistent universe to FPS in the Squadron 42. So we are shaping the game much like we did with Arena Commander. So when it comes to stances, or the way you are stood in first-person shooter games. Most traditional FPS games have two aim stances, one being firing while moving, which is classed as hip fire, and the other is aiming down your sights, which obviously the standard trade-off being your field of view versus accuracy. Star Citizen will feature three different stances, the first one being lowered, the second being ready, and the third being ADS, or aim down sights. So when we look at the first stance, which is known as lowered, the lowered stance, as you can see in the picture we have, the gun barrel is pointing to the floor. He is not aiming, and this allows for greater and quicker movement of the player, so you can sprint, you can jump, etc, etc. The trade-off obviously being that firing from this position would be considered as hip fire, so it's not going to be accurate. There's a large spread for your bullets, there's a large sway, and the recoil will make a big effect. And also, when you want to get to aiming down the sights, it will require a lot more time than, say, ready position. So the ready stance, this is a stance that brings the weapon up to the shoulder, but without the camera looking down the sights. So this will feel more like a traditional FPS where you're not aiming, but you have the gun in a static position, usually classed as hip fire. From here, to use the lowered stance, the character must first slow to a walk, and then the weapon will be lowered. That's how you initiate lowered. It's not a click of a button, it's just you start walking, the character will naturally lower the weapon. So from the ready stance, the character can promptly raise the weapon to aim down the sights much quicker than he can from the lowered stance. There's less spread, there's less sway, and there's less recoil as you have the weapon correctly placed within your shoulder, but still not as accurate as ADS, or aiming down the sights. So moving on to ADS, or aiming down sights, this reduces you to a slow walk. The camera will be focused looking directly down the sights of the weapon, which is making it the most accurate stance you can get. The spread, the sway, and the recoil will be at its minimum depending on the choice of weapon and the fire mode, and unlike other stances which are activated contextually based on the player's movements, ADS will be activated by pressing the aim button. So also, while you are aiming in ADS, you will not be able to use contextual actions while aiming down the sights, making maneuverability severely diminished, and attempting to sprint will not take you out of ADS like it would from the ready stance. And so, from a gameplay perspective, players will be forced to think about their natural movements during combat scenarios. Sprinting from place to place now carries the additional balance layer, and the intention is that players will need to make smart tactical decisions based on their overall abilities, rather than just attempting to blindly run and gun everywhere like you see in the more common FPS games. So how it works is much of the system happens automatically. So if you're sprinting or using contextual navigation, it initiates the lower stance, or the lowered stance, so you will lower your weapon if you start sprinting, but while moving slowly and deliberately, your weapon will be kept in the ready stance, so it's up but it's not aimed. So also, while in the lowered stance, pressing the fire button will bring your weapon back to the ready stance, and holding it will start firing. Whether or not that will play naturally or well in FPS, we are yet to see. It may be that you may end up shooting people in the back, or thinking that you're shooting but you're not. We'll have to see, and we'll have to balance it as we go. Now, the HUD differences, your HUD obviously being the heads-up display, which is what you see on the screen telling you your stats and so forth, will change depending on your stance. So in lowered stance, there will be no aiming reticle, making the player rely on their enhanced movement rather than the weaponry available. In the ready stance, you will not have a precise reticle, but it will be indicated as to where the weapon is aiming based on your helmet that you are wearing and the attached items to indicate, to help you with your aiming. In aiming down the sights, or ADS stance, a reticle will appear based on the type of attachment you have assigned, like iron sights, reflex, hollow scope, or a sniper scope, etc, etc. So when it comes to breathing, stamina and breathing will be a real important part in Star Citizen's FPS mode, and it will be simulated in the FPS combat much deeper than more tactical games that we know of, like Arma for instance. We know if you play Arma, or if you play Arma, your breath will be replicated, but they're going into more finer detail with this game, and this is where it really stands out from the rest. So in regards to your stamina, it will be a resource that you have to manage, and so sprinting, vaulting, mounting, climbing, and breath control will all be something you need to control, and all these actions will lower your stamina, and a low stamina will create lots of knock-on effects like reducing your sprint distance, your ability to aim properly, and the amount of breath that you can hold while aiming. This is actually intended to slow down the pace of combat, and get away from that sort of COD Battlefield feel that you often find with FPS games, and make it feel a bit more tactical, so you're not constantly thinking just run and surprise the enemy, because you will not be able to aim and you'll be a sitting duck basically. So again, while walking, your stamina will slowly regenerate. Standing still will obviously allow your stamina to regenerate quicker, and staying behind cover or aiming without holding your breath will regenerate too. Now, in addition to this, your armor and other handheld equipment will have a direct impact on your stamina consumption. So heavy armor will drain your stamina quicker than medium, so on and so forth. The design team are experimenting at the moment on different ways to display the player's stamina without taking you out of the verse, without breaking the immersion. And the current thought is to indicate it on your HUD via a heart rate monitor. So your HUD will be hooked up to your heart rate and it will tell you how much your heart is beating, which will tell you to either slow down or tell you that you have, you know, a bit of energy in reserve to continue. And obviously, if you have little to no stamina remaining, your character will breathe heavily, thus increasing weapon spray. It will also prevent you from running around at will, and this will create natural pauses during the breathing. So after a heavy exertion, your breathing will be very short and quick. And going on to breathing now, it's a really interesting concept they have. Now, this is something I didn't know, but if you're a soldier or you're an ex-military guy, you will obviously understand this, that soldiers must control their breathing in order to fire more accurately. And they want to simulate this in the game. So every breath you take, it has two pauses, one at the top and one at the bottom. So at the top of your breath, when you take a breath in, you will stop. Your motions will stop. Your rib cage will stay static, and you will not be moving as much as you would do between breaths. Also, at the bottom of your breath, so when you breathe out, at the bottom you will not again move as much as you would do in between. So if you were to really take this to town, you would be able to feel your breathing within the game and know that at the top of a breath you have a more accurate shot, and at the bottom of your breath you will as well. So you will shoot every breath, and every breath will be more accurate. So they have given us a breakdown of the full stamina breath pattern. So there's a 1 second pause at the top and bottom of each breath. There is 2 seconds to move from the top to bottom of your breath. So when you have no stamina, your breath pattern changes. So the previous was your full stamina. The no stamina has very short pauses between the top and the bottom breath, or for the top and the bottom breath, of about 0.2 and 0.3 of a second. So it's decreased rapidly. Also, the time between a breath, so the up and the down travel time, is about 1 second, where it was, so it's halved basically from the previous. And again, like traditional FPSs, if you hold your breath, you will steady your weapon. If you have no stamina, it'll be less time than if you had a full stamina bar. But also, once you release your breath, your sway will be much more increased than if you were just in standard up and down breathing. So it's going to play into a big balance as to how well you perform in FPS. And they have mentioned that you can hold your breath if you have no stamina for about 1 second before releasing, in which case there'll be 6 seconds afterwards, which will cause a greater amount of sway. So you've really got to balance it out well. Now, they say the next steps for this is leading into melee combat and brawling, which is very exciting. So with the breathing and the stamina as balance points, they believe that they can make something a little more interesting than the traditional press space to punch melee option, and the animation speed, damage amount and more can be tied to the breathing and stamina subsystems, making the melee combat a little more interesting and feel more like a real fight. So this is just the first person shooter with guns. Obviously you'll be able to brawl, and it'll be a bit more of a battle, so maybe there will actually be an in-fiction fight club, or even another e-sport where you can actually battle with fists to see who comes out trumps. Anyway, this was the FPS stances and breathing design post. Tell me your thoughts. How do you feel about all this? I really want to know, so get them in the comments. So, also this week, we saw James Pugh interview a chap called Thomas Hennessy, who is the videographer for Star Citizen. We had a new advocacy archive, which was titled Manhunt, but I am still to read it, so I cannot comment on it yet. There was also a Galactic Guide, which introduced Squadron 78. Again, I am yet to read, but if it's something you're interested in, the description will hold all the links to these posts. Also this week, there was a post introducing us to Foundry 42 in Frankfurt, Germany. This is the latest office office to open, or the latest studio to open, who are helping develop the Star Citizen project. We had a little snippet into their offices and they gave us a little walk around to where they are working. So there was a post for RSVP for Gamescom 2015. If you plan to go or you are wanting to go, be sure to get in there and purchase your tickets. They are decreasing rapidly. And for all you subscribers out there, CIG have awarded us with the Jean Catu Al, which is the little unusual alien ship. It is the model that we can see in our display cabinets, not the actual ship itself, but you can see that now in your hangars. There was also a quick note from Chris Roberts himself explaining the patch version numbering. So, as we know, recently released was the Alpha 1.1.0. So, Alpha 1.1.2 will be a bug fixing patch, readying our launcher for Star Marine. The Alpha 1.2.0 will be Star Marine itself, which is the first person shooter. After that, 1.3.0 will be the social module, but also there'll most likely be little miniature patches in between these big patches just to fix some bugs that come up which they didn't plan on. Anyway, the final post this week was to announce the release of 1.1.1, which brings us the Gladiator into flight ready state, also the turrets on the Hornet, the Gladiator and the Cutlass, or should I say second seat functionality, allowing second players to jump into the turret on a two-man ship and wreak havoc. So with thanks to Robert, we have the Aurora MR game package to give away. This package includes the Aurora MR ship, obviously, or the Marquee, the self-land hangar, starting money of 1,000 United Earth credits, 2 months insurance on your MR, the digital Star Citizen manual, the Squadron 42 digital download, and the Star Citizen digital download itself. So to stand a chance of winning this, you need to be a subscriber to start with, and also comment below telling us what paint scheme you would want for your ship. The winner will be drawn using a randomizer in next week's show, so get your comments in below to stand the chance. So yet again we have come to the end of the show. I just want to say a big thank you to all our subscribers and a massive thank you to all our patrons. You are truly helping our channel grow. If you are interested or able to help us out in way of a monthly donation from as little as $1 to any amount you deem fit, check out our Patreon page in the description. This really helps our channel to create more videos, better quality videos, as it allows us to get better hardware, better software, plus it allows us to spend more time on creating the videos. Don't forget to subscribe, comment if you have anything to say, show me the love by hitting the like button and share it with all your friends and enemies. Thank you for watching and I shall see you in next week's show.